I wanted to talk to you today about the ability to work remotely in an agile setting. We're going to be talking maybe for about 30 to 40 minutes or so, and then we'll also be taking questions as we go. That means that you have the opportunity to type questions in the Q&A panel. You should have a Q&A session right there next to you. But if you can't find it and you're already on the chat window, feel free to type your question there. We'll scan them both to make sure that we're following along with any particular questions that you might have. At some point during the presentation, we might unmute and just allow you to speak as well if you feel comfortable, but different people have different preferences. So we'll give you all of the choices. In the meantime, feel free to record any of your questions on the board, and I'll try to scan them as I go, and for us to essentially be able to interact that way. Today, I wanted to give you an Agile treat. You might say, well, what is that? We're going to explore what that is. I'll give you a hint. It's in the content of distributed Agile teams and how we can get distributed Agile to work effectively. We're going to be talking about, well, brief introduction so you know who I am, and also our unique partnerships that we have with the Agile Coaching Group. We're going to be talking about the distributed Agile challenges that most organizations and what we're seeing across the board as far as what they're facing today. And I'm starting to give you a hint in terms of what this Agile treat is. We're going to talk about the tools, the roles, the events, the artifacts, and the techniques that make for successful distributed Agile. We're going to address your questions as we go. So as I mentioned, for those of you that joined a little later, feel free to add questions in the Q&A panel, but you can also just put them in the chat room. We'll scan in both. And we'll get an opportunity to see where you can learn more if you're interested to continue on the topic. My name is Ernesto Custodio. I am the founder and the president of Agile Genesis. Agile Genesis focuses on Agile transformations, in particular when it comes to distributed Agile team and the ability to get global distribution to work effectively. To do so, we train in various Agile certifications. I am certified in SAFe as SPC 5. I've traditionally been a project manager, so I also hold my PMI certification, as well as the various Scrum Inc. trainer certifications for Scrum at Scale and for Scrum. That includes Scrum Master training, as well as PO, meaning product owner. And of course, on Scrum Alliance, various certifications, including the CSPO and CSPSM. I have been involved in academia and practicing Agile for quite some time, a little longer than I like to admit. I hold an MBA, and I'm currently a PhD candidate working on distributed Agile collaboration as a dissertation. I truly enjoy training and coaching, in a large part because I get to learn as much from you as hopefully you'll get to learn from myself. So feel free to, again, provide some of your insights and some of your questions as we go, because that's part of why I love doing what I do, so that there's an exchange of information. If you want to connect, feel free to do so via LinkedIn. I'm always on it and happy to collaborate with anyone that is interested in an Agile collaboration. Okay. We are partnering with the Agile Coaching Group, and that when I say we, I mean Agile Genesis. So today we're having a partnership to instill some of the Agile transformations across the globe, and we wanted to share some of this information with you via this webinar. I want to pass it over to Khaled, who is on the call, for a brief introduction. For a brief introduction of the Agile Coaching Group and some of the services that they offer. Khaled, are you on audio?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ernesto. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Khalid Rawi. I'm the owner of Agile Coaching Group. Agile Coaching Group is a Chicago-based business agility transformation consultancy. We provide many agile services like agile transformation coaching, DevOps consulting, and training as well. We provide also a wide range of certifications, certified courses like we are partner with IC Agile, Scaled Agile, and we provide also a customized workshop and hands-on training. In addition to long-term programs in business agility transformation, enterprise agile transformation, and leadership. We try to provide something different to our customers, individuals or organizations. So that's all. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you for that, Khaled. And Khaled is being modest as always. He's highly involved and very much about getting involved with the community in a way that continues the momentum that Agile is having throughout the various cities and the various places around the world. So very excited to have the opportunity for us to partner and continue to join forces in that. So let's talk about the Agile tree and effective Agile collaboration when it comes to distributed teams. Before we do that, not being familiar with many folks and for those that feel comfortable with Chad and giving us an idea in terms of how much experience you might have with Agile in general. If we did, again, a scale from 1 to 5, I'm going to draw a quick line on the chat window here, just so that we're not confusing the votes. And this time, I'd love to hear how much experience you have with Agile. I'm going to just draw a quick line there. So from 1 to 5, if you can just, 1 being, or 0 being, hey, I've heard about this Agile thing and I was curious and I joined this webinar. Or 5, hey, I could be delivering this training side by side with Ernesto. Give us an idea in terms of your experience from 0 to 5 in terms of your Agile journey and where you are today. Okay, so we've got a range. Seeing some of the lower end on the 2 side, no 0s, no 1s, that's good. Got a 5, got a couple of 4s. So we seem to be in the mid to advanced range, which is great. So thank you for giving me a general guide in terms of where some folks might be. And that tells me that I don't need to spend a lot of time on this topic. I like to talk about the Agile umbrella as it's become more popular in terms of how do we refer to this framework or this group of frameworks. And just putting it into perspective, because sometimes we use Scrum and Agile interchangeably. Sometimes we use Kanban in Agile. Sometimes we refer to Scrum Band. What are these things, right? So Agile is a set of values and principles. It was based on a document that was created with a single sheet with the values in the front and the principles in the back, so that we can all get together around this belief and this mindset that we can work together effectively by following certain values and principles. And that became the Agile Manifesto. Under the Agile Manifesto are the actual frameworks that help us implement those values and principles. These frameworks are things like Scrum, Kanban, XP. On the scaling side, there are specific frameworks to help us work across teams, to help us coordinate and facilitate and be effective and efficient with multiple teams in an organization. They're known as the scaling frameworks. And that's when we get into Scrum at Scale. That's when we get into SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework. That's when we get into LESS and others, right? We're not going to go into a description of what they are, but just setting the context for the fact that, hey, we got Agile as a value and principle cloud, and then we got these drips, these frameworks that are the individual frameworks that help us implement it. And within the frameworks, we've got the single team frameworks, and then we've got the scaling frameworks, right? I think we all align behind that. So Daniel's saying, I can't see anyone's text message in the channel. So that makes sense. We are getting, I am able to see that, so I apologize for that, Daniel. I think that has to do with the panelists versus not. I am getting quite a lot on the chat. Maybe you have the ability to not just send only to the panelists, but you can send to all attendees. So make sure that when you're sending your message where it says to, you are able to click on that drop box and then select all, and everyone else will be able to see you. If you don't have that, it might just be locked for the webinar, and I apologize if that's the case. But we've got some folks saying that they got it, so that might have worked. Great, thank you for calling that out. All right. When we talk about the challenges, I kind of got ahead a little bit. Let me go back a little bit and stop here for a second. And now that we got our chat right, I want to start leveraging some of this chat. So let me do a line here. I'm going to say challenges and question marks. So I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about some of the primary challenges that you face when you are working in a distributed environment with Agile teams. What are some of those top of mind things that normally bite you? If you can type some of that in the chat room, just to give us an idea. Again, make sure that you're selecting all so that everyone else can enjoy the same level that I'm seeing here. So lack of participation from one of the participants. I won't mention names to keep it to keep the privacy. We've got people are doing other work during meetings as they are directly in front of the computer. Yes, yes, yes. So distractions are another one. Yes, other work during meetings, exclamation mark. So we've got someone doubling down on that and completely agreeing. Excellent. All right, feel free to continue typing some of those challenges in there. It'll help us get some color around what you're facing and maybe even some of the things that we can address as we continue to work. I will show you here, which I've already gave you a sneak peek, some of the top challenges that we are gathering. This is from the body of knowledge and also from experiences that we're seeing in the field. So when you talk about distributed Agile teams, the teams begin, the team members, the individual team members begin to lose that connection to the team, to the mothership, if you will. They lose the collective identity, the fact that, hey, we're in this together, we're a team, we're here to win, and they become individuals, right? The second highest one is low levels of communication. The teams feel that they don't have the exposure to the communication that they had before, when I could just talk to someone across my cube or across my pod, right? There's a level of reduced morale. I would like to add that I believe number 3, in fact, it has to do with a combination of multiple items that are listed here, such as the low level of communication. That in itself produces low morale, including some of the other factors. So if I was putting this in a new order, I would probably move number 3 to 8 and conclude that there's an influence from the others into 8, right? We deal with slow impediment resolutions. Maybe a lot of you are already seeing some of this, right? You're coming across problems in your own environment, and you are trying to get help to resolve that, maybe from the leadership, and they're not being as attentive because there's an element of out of sight, out of mind that plays here. The knowledge exclusion is part of that low level of communication, but it has also to do with the fact that there's no visual radiators. You know, when we are co-located and we walk in the hallways, we see the product backlog, or we see the burn down, we see elements on the team's cues that help us to sort of understand where we are and what's happening. Just the level of sound and noise that we pick up on tells us if things are calm or if there's a crisis. When we are distributed, we are not seeing those things. So the knowledge becomes more the knowledge exclusion is more pronounced. Teams are misaligned. So as a result of low communication, the teams begin to lose alignment between them. We see a lot of overlap in work, a lot of rework, things reinventing the wheel. And then all of this leads to some level of distrust. If I don't see you working, I might interpret that to be that you're slacking off or that you aren't as vested as I am, and the trust level begins to decrease. And then the last one is one of my favorites, the lack of common goal. I might be busy, I might be trying to achieve some things, but are we moving forward together to achieve something that tells us we are a team? A lot of individuals begin to work with their head down at their desk from their home office or when they're remote and forget the fact that we are all trying to achieve a single common goal, right? So these are the most common ones. To address these, I've come up with the Agile treat. The Agile treat is the consideration to the fact that to make this work well, we need to consider tools. We need to consider the roles that might need to be added. We need to consider the events that are unique to Agile distribution success. We need to look at the artifacts, and we also have a series of techniques. Now, this is by no means enough time to cover all of these. So I picked out a few examples that will help us have the conversation and give you an idea in terms of where we are as far as providing you with the elements of the treat that could be useful to you, right? How many of you are using various tools? I'd like to, again, poll, and I'm gonna do in the chat window, I'm just gonna put tools question mark, and when I count to 3 without influencing each other, I'd like you to tell us about some of the tools that you're using that are proven to be useful for your distributed environment. 1, 2, 3, go. So Jira goes without saying, right? Many of us live in Jira nowadays. Teams, by teams we mean Microsoft Teams. It's a unified collaboration now that allows us to make not only calls, chats, also video calls, share, use it as a formal repository. Jira and Slack, so there are individuals that are using Slack for their team chats as well as file sharing and other neat things that Slack does as far as integration. Slack, seeing Jira again. Confluence for some wiki posts. Some of us that are old enough, we tend to call them wikis. But the idea that you can have bulletin boards. We have Skype. I don't see Skype as much, but it's very useful in terms of getting a call with the rest of the team as needed. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, Miro, one of my favorites. Thank you for sharing that, Bobby and David. So Miro is king when it comes to whiteboard collaboration. If you haven't tried it, give it a shot. It's a great tool for us to collaborate in real time like we would in front of a whiteboard, right? I recently have also been working with Mural. So there's Miro and there's Mural. Don't let them confuse you. One is MU, the other one is MI. But here are a few more. The idea that you have a portfolio of tools now, and they're becoming more and more and more popular as we begin to work in a distributed environment at a global level now due to COVID-19. You have things like unified communication. This is, you mentioned it, Microsoft Teams, you have Cisco Spark, you have quite a bit of choices available to you. This is not an exhaustive list, but one meant to give you examples of the different categories that are essential for you to have distributed collaboration. Project management, many of you pick Jira. You also have Rally available to you, version 1, and Trello. Trello is a very cheap alternative, an economical alternative to being able to have your Kanban-like board if you have a small team and want to keep it simple, right? Jira recently introduced a free version that I believe allows up to 7 team members to collaborate for free. Rally is very good when it comes to portfolio management. I've used Rally extensively. Recently, they're sort of falling off the radar a little bit as they go through some of their acquisition and internal adjustments, but very, very good tool for allowing you to have that portfolio view. It's worth mentioning that there's something also called Jira Portfolio that's integrated into Jira. And you have version 1 and other tools. So quite a library here. Key thing, make sure that you have unified communication so that anyone can be reached at any given point when needed, that you have project management so that these assets, these boards that used to be physical, these boards that we had the opportunity to create stickies and put up on a wall at the office are now all being integrated into digital platforms because of the necessity, but also because many of us have practiced Agile in, even before COVID-19 and needed a way to collaborate. So these are very mature platforms already. From a DevOps perspective, we have things like GitHub, Jenkins, Puppet, Docker. These are all ways for us to coordinate code development if you're in software. I should mention that these particular ones are more oriented toward software. You don't have to be in software to do Agile, by the way. There are quite a number of Agile implementations that range from restaurant operations to cruise ship management to HR and other areas. But if you are in software, these are some of the things that are essential for you to have code coordination. Web conferencing, well, we're using one right now, right? Good old Zoom. There's WebEx. You have Teams has an ability to do that. Amazon Chime, many don't know that Amazon actually has their own. GoToMeeting and Ring Central. These are all very viable. Depending on your organization, you might be using a different one. Many of them, if not all of them, have some form of free version that you can benefit from if you don't have a paid account. Okay, and we're going to talk about why some of these are critical, especially in the area of video. And then there is knowledge sharing. When we talk about knowledge sharing, this is our Confluence board. This is our SharePoint. This is where we're able to create those visual elements that we could all agree to keep there in order for us to have that visual radiation, right? Instant messaging goes without saying. Many of you mentioned Slack, Microsoft Teams, HipChat, and others. This is asynchronous no, this is synchronous to a level, semi-asynchronous, I suppose, because if you're not there, the message will be waiting for you when you get back, whereas some of the others may be in real time, right? Collaboration whiteboard, here's Miro, here's Mural. These are the two that I was referring to. The names are different. They're actually different tools. Do very, very similar things. Span is also very good. And then there's more economical alternatives such as Microsoft Whiteboard. Microsoft Windows, if you're not a Mac user using Windows, has a very decent whiteboarding tool built right into Microsoft Office, into Windows. You can launch that and you can invite others and you can collaborate in real time. So you've got quite a set of choices when it comes to your budgetary ability or free versions, right? And then events and activity, I added a few. Again, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list. In our blogs, we continue to add content to provide more and more color around these. But here are a few off the cuff, right? Tasty Cups, great website for Agile retrospective ideas. Very, very clever stuff in there that could allow your teams to have fun, even in a remote environment. Pointing Poker is a great free tool. You don't have to sign up. It just starts a session right away, and you can use it for your planning poker. So it's pointingpoker.com. And then game storming, another a source of ideas for potential team building things that you can do to enhance the experience during some of your events. Okay, so we spend a lot of time here on the tools, but I wanted to at least cover some of the categories and give you some examples so that you walk away with those as part of your takeaways here. Okay, I'm gonna erase all the ink and let's talk about the roles. When we talk about the roles, we need to explore the idea that what we have is the need for individual teams. If these are Scrum teams, we need to have various teams work together in a way that allows us to be as productive as if we were in the office. What we found is that the Scrum at Scale framework is actually quite aligned with this because it allows for the organic aspect of Scrum to continue even if you're remote. So to do this, we have this idea of a Scrum of Scrums. Now, given your level of Agile expertise ranging from 2 to 5, some of you might be somewhat familiar with it, others, for you, this is second nature, right? When you have a Scrum of Scrums form, that is a team of teams that is essentially coordinating and delivering together, you need this role to be accountable, and that is the Scrum of Scrum Masters to be able to resolve impediments for the Scrum of Scrums. This is not for the individual teams. These are impediments that are affecting all of the teams in the Scrum of Scrums. This individual is responsible for the effectiveness of the team, for the productivity of the team of teams. And they do so by spreading knowledge. Here, we have a team that learned something new, and we don't want this to stay here. We want to propagate this throughout the other teams. Well, the Scrum of Scrum as a team, not as an event, is a great place to do that. This is a team, not an individual event. So the Scrum of Scrums has been somewhat misconstrued over the years to be this single meeting where we just talk about the 3 questions, what we did yesterday, what we're going to do today, are there any impediments, and let's go. And what it truly was meant to be and how it really brings the value to the table is when it is a team that is focused on delivering the increment at the team of teams level. And in order to do that, you need a Scrum Master that is coordinating the productivity aspect of it. Okay, that is the efficiency. Okay. When we talk about the what, meaning the prioritization aspect, we need a similar role in the Scrum of Scrum. We need this concept of the chief product owner. You may call this person whatever you want. There's no wrong name for this. As long as you have someone that is able to coordinate a single product backlog that different teams are working from, and that the prioritization is being addressed on an ongoing basis, you may call that person whatever you want. For our purposes, let's call it the chief product owner. The chief product owner's primary responsibility is to prioritize. Why is this important? Well, if we're in a distributed environment and we have multiple priorities, chances are we're going to work on separate things and we're not going to achieve either one of them. But if we focused on the one important thing, on the next big thing together, and we coordinate that work through the help of the Scrum of Scrums, we together can be as productive as we were in the office. The idea that we're doing so, not by the decisions we're making blindly to what is more important, but that is representing the stakeholders, the customer. The chief product owner is bringing that information to us. These individuals that are here are in constant communication with the chief product owner in order to ensure that we are looking at the highest priorities. Okay? When you're forming the Scrum of Scrums, it could be representatives from the various Scrum teams. So you will have a Scrum Master here, Scrum Master here, and so on. The same thing could happen with the PO, where the Chief Product Owner is a representative that is coming from here. The key thing is that these individuals are accountable. They're not just figureheads, and they own delivery and prioritization. Okay? So the PO, we know what the PO is responsible for, right? Prioritization, the vision, all of the elements that apply to the PO are applying to the Chief Product Owner, but at scale in this case, okay? And they own the release planning for the Scrum of Scrums. That's going beyond the single team increment, but the actual Scrum of Scrum and when that gets released. right? And they help to remove impediment. This might look a little curious because that's usually the job of the Scrum Master. In this case, it's referring to resolving impediments raised by the teams when it comes to dependencies. You're going to have a lot of dependency problems here. This team is going to need to wait on this team to finish something so that this can start. The role of the product owner is to try to remove those dependencies to make these things as independent as possible. And if they are dependency problems that are creating some impediment, we want to make sure that they're being addressed. So the chief product owner helps to resolve the dependencies raised by the teams, okay, in the form of a type of impediment. When it comes to the events, I want to also continue to monitor the Q&A. Okay, we're good there. Monitoring the chat and everyone is sitting well. I want to pause here for a second and maybe say questions, right? So that you have the opportunity to ask any questions that you might be thinking as we go, right? So if you have any questions, just feel free to type it in the chat, okay? The events, when we talk about distributed Agile, you might say, okay, well, if the Scrum is a team of teams who's responsible for delivering, what is this event? What is this meeting that we have that we call the Scrum? Well, that is actually the scaled daily Scrum. That is a daily event. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to present you with the unique events that are necessary for effective distributed Agile. You need a product backlog refinement as an actual meeting, as an event. If you're familiar with the Scrum Guide, you will know that the Scrum Guide considers 4 different events. In fact, it's 5 if you count the sprint. Those are the daily Scrum, that's the 15-minute meeting. That is the sprint planning. We also have the sprint review, we have the retrospective, and we have the sprint. So we have 5 events in Scrum. If you're practicing Scrum, I suggest that we add a 6. And the 6 is our product backlog refinement. Why? Why is the product backlog refinement an activity when we're co-located, but it's an event in distributed Agile? Well, because I can't pull you in ad hoc. I can't just go over to your desk and say, hey, Max, can you help me here with a particular refinement? Or can we get the team together after lunch for refinement? That's going to be very difficult when everyone is working remote. So we need to have cadence. We need to have a meeting. Therefore, it becomes an event. Okay. Some of the team members begin to feel disconnected after a while. We want to make sure that we keep them going. The Zoom happy hours are all the rave now. I've attended a few myself. I'm sure you have as well. Let's keep that going. Keep that going at work. There are other ways to connect as well. Socially, you can set up a social hour and have show and tells and on and on and on and on. When we're finally over the COVID-19 hump and we are able to get together again, there are 2 elements that are very valuable for effective distributed team collaboration. And that is, the first is seating. This is the first meeting where individuals get to know each other, where we take the team out to dinner and we build a social capital, right? The second one is this idea of visitation. Visitation is me getting on an airplane and going where the majority of the team is so that I might actually join them on a periodic basis, maybe quarterly, maybe twice a year, depending on how far and how budget permits. But seating, the initial meeting where we get to know each other and then we go back and work remotely helps a lot because now we know each other and we understand each other better. And then visitation so that we can keep to refresh those are elements that later when travel opens up and we're able to get together physically, even if you're in a distributed environment, you're able to have some physical connection, and it goes a long way. In my distributed teams, I've gotten so much done from these 2 ideas, from the idea that I made it a point to travel to India as an example, at least twice a year, meet with my team, spend time with them. Those relationships that we forged, they pay dividends time after time after time. I was very, very productive at getting things done, even with distributed teams, by the fact that I took the time for the visitations to occur. So I highly recommend these when it's possible again. Okay. We talked about the Scale Daily Scrum. Nothing new here. The Scale Daily Scrum is what we normally call the Scrum of Scrum. It's that one meeting where individuals are meeting to talk about what the Scrum of Scrum did yesterday, what they're going to do today, and any impediments that they might have. And do we have any actual learnings from the various teams? Are these key things that I mentioned here that we did well propagating over to the other teams so that they're able to benefit from that knowledge as well? So a fourth aspect to a daily Scrum. It is important that it remains a 15-minute meeting. So I highly recommend the question format. What did we do yesterday? What are we going to do today? And do we have any impediments with the addition of any learning experiences that we want to share, right? Artifacts. When we talked about the artifacts of Scrum, we tend to address the sprint backlog, the product backlog, and the increment, meaning the actual value that we're delivering at the end. I recommend that you keep additional artifacts. Well, teamwork and agreement is not new to you if you have some experience, right? The idea that you have different flexible times now becomes something that you want to be clear about when it's okay to reach you. And if I do need to reach you after hours as per our agreement because it's an emergency, how do I do that? What's the best way to do it? Do I call you? Do I Slack you? Do I text you? Let's agree on those, right? So there are many different things that become important for us to agree so that we're continuing to work in a harmonious way as we work remotely, right? You might have things here like turn on video during meetings or not. That depends. Let's agree on those, right? Impediment removals. So this is a impediment backlog. I recommend that you keep an actual backlog that is for impediments that each team is having. And this is something that the Scrum of Scrum maintains so that it is systematically being addressed on a daily basis, and it has an age. How much time has this been a problem so that we can see if we're addressing things on a regular basis or not? And if we're not, we got ourselves a problem, and that is that we're not addressing problems, right? Definition of ready. If you are a PO, product owner, how many of you are operating in the capacity of a product owner? I'm going to, Monisha, I do see your question, and we're going to address that. Thank you for asking it. I'm going to ask here, how many of you are in a PO position? And if you are, just say yes, and we'll have some idea, right? But if you are a product owner, I've got some encouragement for you to spend more time than you did before refining the product backlog. It is that much more critical that we have a ready product backlog. If you don't, your entire team is going to sit idle. They can't come to you with a request every time they want to work on something. That's going to move the needle very, very, very slow if it moves it at all. It is on you, product owners, to have a product backlog that contains enough ready product backlog items for the team to remain productive sprint after sprint. And that's going to take time. And one of those includes agreeing to what ready means. Does it include acceptance criteria? Has it been prioritized? Has it been estimated? These are all elements that are important in order to ensure that the team is able to take on the next set of product backlog items or user stories, as sometimes we tend to call them, right? And things like a contact sheet. Do you have a roster of everyone, right? We covered that a little earlier here, right? These are very important parts. And this is part of the working agreement in terms of here's where I'm going to contact you. Why don't we put that in the contact sheets as a form of an artifact, and how we do that, at what time we do that, and so on, so that I don't have to spend a lot of time looking. I know exactly where to go. Okay. So Manish had a question. Does the Scrum of Scrum, is it supposed to be daily? Yes. It is, thank you for asking the question, because I want to be very clear about that. It is very important that the Scrum of Scrum is working daily on an active basis, not weekly, not every 2 weeks. It's not enough time, especially in a remote environment. If you get the entire teams to synchronize for 15 minutes by going through their individual stand up, and then the Scrum of Scrum stand up, and the Scrum of Scrum takes those impediments and acts on what they need to do in order to deliver, you will not only achieve the productivity you had before, it's very likely that you will go above that if you weren't doing these things before. So daily is the key. That is why this event is actually called the Scaled Daily Scrum, precisely for that. So there's no confusion to the fact that you need to do this daily. Okay. And then on to the techniques in treat. When we talk about the techniques, so Manish is acknowledging that he got that. I'm glad. When you talk about the things that you do, I'm going to flicker away over here for a second. I'm going to just put up a question mark on some of the techniques. What are some of the things that you love that have proven to be effective for you when it comes to distributed teams? What are the practices, right? So feel free to chime in and offer some of your suggestions on the chat. While you do that, I'm going to go to this chart and show you some of those. We have primarily coordination and trust and belonging as 2 examples. There are many more. By the way, this is part of what we normally cover during our Scrum of Scrum class as an added bonus material to allow you to collaborate effectively. So there's a lot more content behind this. For the benefit of time, as I mentioned, I'm sampling some of the highlights and making them specific enough so that they're useful to you as soon as tomorrow. Okay, so we picked out a few, and that includes coordination. So when we talk about coordination, daily communication, the Scaled Daily Scrum, establishing cadence. That is ensuring that you're holding those additional activities that used to be activities that now become events, such as the sprint, product backlog refinement. Responding fast. Well, how about keeping an impediment removal backlog that is looked at by the senior leaders on an ongoing basis to ensure that it is being addressed and that they are helping remove anything that is keeping the teams from moving forward. A new artifact that allows us to essentially be effective at removing roadblocks so that we can move through quicker. And then the common Scrum events, the idea that everybody is doing it exactly the same way as far as when they're happening and how they're happening. Backlog decomposition needs to be a part of the team activities in a way that allow them to get to the smallest item on that product backlog in a way that they understand it and in a way that allows them to work independently once the sprint start on that particular unit with the least amount of dependencies, right? And then there's a common definition of done. The teams need to all agree that when one team says I'm done, it means the same thing for the other teams. If you don't have a common definition of done, you might be challenged to deliver, because if your team is taking it all the way up to integration testing, but another team is just stopping at UAT maybe, or stopping at any of the items before that, you're not going to have the same ability to publish this stuff together, right? When it comes to trust and belonging, a very, very important factor that is usually taken for granted. Creating a sprint goal is a key element of allowing you to build trust and belonging. Why? How does a bullet of something that we want to achieve build trust? Well, The fact that we are working together, that we are in this together to achieve something, starts to create that communication that allows us to begin working together in a way that I have to trust you and you have to trust me, right? And by the way, we now belong to something bigger. It's not, I'm not a unit now, I am a member of a team. And the common spring goal helps us to do that. Creating a safe place, psychological safety is a big factor here. We want to allow the team members to fail fast and feel that they are able to do this without repercussion. Um, an outcome mindset. If you're an agile leader, if you're a manager, if you're in any position of authority, it's very important that you start to manage the productivity, not the captivity of the team. What does that mean? It means that you can't look at someone when they're working in a distributed environment and assume that they're working or not. What you need to look at is what value is being produced by the overall team. So this idea of micromanaging has to be thrown out the window, and trust has to be put in its place. Social time, we talked about it. And video on. I want to talk about video for a second because you've all heard turn video on when you're in a Zoom meeting or when you're in Teams. But what I want to contribute here is the numbers and why this is important. If you already know that turning on video, it's a good thing. Well, here are some actual studies showing the benefit of video in remote meetings. When you turn on video, the amount of perceived authenticity by that other individual in the meeting starts to climb, that you're being authentic, that you actually are telling the truth. Just by the fact that you're turning video, it's helping with that. The focus that everyone in the meeting has goes up. So one of you mentioned as far as, and it was second and third by some of the others in the chat, that individuals are distracted because they're in front of a computer. Well, here's the proof that turning on video actually helps to reduce that. Or the other way around, the half full version of that is that it increases focus. Okay? And then there's the idea that I have a level of stress when I go into a meeting, whether I know it or not, about whether I'm going to understand the information. And that stress level actually goes down when individuals share video. There's something about seeing our colleagues' faces that calms us down. The amount of richness that comes in that with that communication allows us to understand the information better. So our stress level for learning goes down. And overall, just the effectiveness of the meeting increases. Okay. Here's some additional stats that I thought were pretty remarkable as far as what video does. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but I do want to point you to this one here. The trust level goes up by an incredible amount, X factors, if you turn video on. So that problem that we tend to have with distributed team members and the trust decreasing is actually improved significantly by the use of video. So if you weren't convinced to use video before as part of your events, I want to give you some numbers to back up the claim and why you should encourage it more. Okay. And on the techniques, I want to point out, so you have team of teams, you have the common need to deliver. This is expressed into your common spring goal. The release team, this is your actual Scrum of Scrum teams owning the release, okay? This is your ability for the team to actually understand that there are certain skill sets that need to be developed or that need to be brought into the team in order for us to do this effectively. So this is not a meeting. This is an actual team looking to improve how they do things on a regular basis, okay? And they operate as a Scrum team. That means they meet on a daily basis and they have the Scrum events. It is something that includes the Scrum Masters and the Chief Product Owner. This is the Scrum Master and the PO on steroids. They work on removing impediments, and they treat dependencies like a type of impediment, and that they try to reduce it to a minimum, okay? They work on maintaining a common definition of done, and they work together throughout the sprints on a daily basis. And they have all of the characteristics of a typical Agile team. Well, Alexandra, thank you for recognizing that the numbers are helpful for you. Yeah, you're very welcome. In the Scrum meetings, you can scale this as much as you need to, because what you do is if you have your individual teams here, then you have your Scrums, you can have your Scrums. And this can continue on in a way that scales linearly. Saab Aeronautics did this in a way that allowed them to synchronize 2,000 people in an hour. The entire organization was done in an hour, and they understood what they did yesterday, what they were going to work on today, and the impediments that needed to be addressed in order to have that team work effectively, or that organization work effectively. That's very impressive. This is the kind of efficiency you can hope for if you follow this pattern. Okay? I wanted to offer a quick technique. This is a case study that I created where I was dealing with various time zones in different countries. And we had quite a mess in terms of how we were going to develop and how effective we were going to be when you were dealing with California and India and the time separation that came between those two ends of the spectrum, right? So we created Scrum of Scrums in California and North Carolina and London, and then finally in Bangalore. And these individuals were collaborating via the Scrum of Scrums in the way that I described to you. And then we were having a common Scrum of Scrums with the representatives that were a member of this team. This is another way for us to look at how Scrum of Scrums can help with the time zone challenges that we tend to have without impacting everyone. I know that's a lot of arrows, but I'm being cognizant of time. I wanted to make sure that you had the content. These were to develop multiple products, and we were still able to deliver those products even though we were significantly spread out. Most of our stakeholders, by the way, were sitting here in California, and they were very happy with the visibility that they were getting into how these products would deliver. When we did that, we actually created a time zone that had a common border, if you will. This was on the East Coast. And what we did was we had the teams in Asia and Europe meet for the Scrum of Scrums, and then we had the teams in the United States meet for the Scrum of Scrums, and the SOS2s were meeting to be able to synchronize during the common time. Again, these individuals were able to live on with their work-life balance in a very happy way. That's my happy face, without having to be up at 4 in the morning. And we were still able to synchronize the organization as we did that, okay? So with that, we do have 3 minutes left for time. I wanted to try something else, and I think I monitored some of the questions as they came in and was able to answer them as we went. Khaled, are we able to, why don't we do this? Why don't we come back to QA? If you have any questions, please post them in the queue in the chat. Khaled, I'm going to go over to the upcoming events and highlight the fact that this coming weekend we actually have a Scrum at Scale practitioner class. There's still, I think there are about 4 seats left in the class. So if you were interested in joining that class, highly encourage you to go and sign off. Khaled has been generous enough to add a 30% discount to that for you being a participant in this class. So you can go ahead and sign up for 30% this class for that. If the weekend is not your thing, we have another class coming up in September 1st and 2nd. And that is for a Certified Safe Agilist course. The rest, I'm going to leave to Colette to Colette, are you still with me on the audio end? No? Okay, you might be on mute. I am seeing one QA here. Very good. Thank you for the comment, Christine. That was very nice of you. Okay, so with that, we have 1 minute left. I want to use that minute to thank you. And I'm hoping that these treats are able to get you to a higher level of productivity, not just so that you get by during the epidemic period, but also that you actually do it better as time progresses. Time after time, studies have shown that distributed agile teams can be more effective than co-located teams. And now with these items that we cover here today, hopefully you're armed in a better position to do that. Okay, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you at the next session.